You're listening to Arsenal Pass, a flesh and blood podcast for players by players. And all about strategy, leveling up, and the latest news in the world of Wraith. Welcome to Arsenal Pass.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Arsenal Pass, episode 123. And this week we are joined by the illustrious MajinBae, wizard extraordinaire. Majin, thank you so much for coming on the pod. It's been a long time since since I've seen you in person, it's been a long time. I know Hayden, you guys had that great match back in Lille. Very competitive from what I heard. I just want to thank you for taking the time coming on and letting us into sort of the mind of the master when it comes to Icelander, Kano, Wizard, all of this stuff.
Yeah, happy to be on. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah.
I'm excited to ask Caleb about the Emperor, obviously, because that's a wizard, technically.
So it's a wizard. I opened one case of that set. I opened 3 Emperors.
What?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Isn't that card supposed to be
that
rare?
That was my L's. It was just 3 Emperors.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
So, Majin, we have a listener question section every week called the Commanded Cookout. This week, I'm going to be hijacking it to ask you a question. I just want to get the lore and the background on MajinBae, who you are. I think a lot of people know you from Flesh and Blood now because you've made a bit of a name for yourself over the past few years, but also known as a, Jesus Christ, the game just slipped my mind. Streamer, Legends of Runeterra. I almost said Grand Archive because we were talking about it before. Legends of Runeterra streamer, pretty popular streamer at that, and competitor in that game as well. Just give us a little bit of your background in card games, streaming, and sort of how you ended up here today.
Yeah, love card games. Got introduced to them with Magic in like 2014 or something. I was out of high school, and I've always loved like competing. I love strategy games. Just never really got introduced to the world of like strategy gaming. And then with Magic, was super into it. Wizards eventually made me super not into it. And I switched around for a bit before landing on Legends of Runeterra, where I started to make content. And then some people had talked to me about Flesh and Blood. And the first time I played it, I was like, oh, this is quite possibly the best competitive game I've ever played. Like, I love the game of Flesh and Blood. It feels just so like, it feels good to play on like a competitive level. There's always things that I could have changed and done different. I usually don't end my games and go, man, I just had no way of winning, except maybe that game against Hayden in Lille. And so I Flesh and Blood's like my break. I feel like, I play Legend of Runeterra as a career. And then when I want to take a break, I go and I play a Flesh and Blood Battle Hardened or something, come back nice and refreshed.
Yeah.
Usually, you win it, apparently.
Only once.
So, what about Legends of Runeterra? I know you said it's sort of your career at this point, but what about that game scratches the itch for you? Do you find that you still love this game after playing it for so long and competing at a high level for so long? Because that game, and can you give people who are maybe a bit ignorant on how that game works, how it sort of compares to a game like Flesh and Blood, and what about that game sort of makes you interested? It makes it so you can keep playing it over and over again for how long you have been.
Yeah, Runeterra is a really interesting one. So one, I love the League of Legends IP. Big fan, even though I was introduced to it also pretty late. But I really like it. And it feels kind of like Hearthstone did, but if you took the stack from Magic and then like tripled the interactiveness. Because the thing about Legend of Runeterra that I really appreciate is that there's no your turn or my turn. Every turn is our turn. If you take an action, I get to take an action. And that's how the entire game is played out. The only difference is that one player is allowed to attack on one turn on odds, and the other player is allowed to attack on evens, and it constantly just kind of goes back and forth. There's no mana screw, and just being able to be like, okay, they're doing this, I can respond with this. And this is a little bit of a deep cut for people who don't play Legend of Runeterra, but I think the best part, the part that really endears me to the game, is actually the priority system. Have you guys played the game at all?
A little bit, but I have played Magic as well, which has a priority system. So how does it compare to a priority system that we might be reminiscent of in something like Magic Gathering?
It's very similar to Magic, but imagine that if I pass priority and you pass priority, the turn ends, period. So there's a lot of jockeying for position. Maybe you cast something that's not so committal, because if you force your opponent to cast their committal play first, you have more information and you get to adapt to that. And a lot of high level strategy revolves around that positioning. And I think that's such an interesting thing. It would make you think of poker, where you're always like trying to play your hands in position. It's very similar to that.
How does the dynamic of variance versus skill sort of weigh out in a game like Runeterra? Because I think if we look at something like Flesh and Blood, it's almost skill intensive to a fault, where we see the same players recurring in top eights over and over and over again. And, we have these conversations with people like Brian Gottlieb, like, should we be taking it back to the Starvo days, etc.? What is it like in Runeterra? Is it a game where the better player tends to win, or is it more of a, I don't know, kind of a Magic the Gathering-esque level of variance, a Hearthstone-esque level of variance?
One time on a stream, I actually sat down and made like a graph. I was like, here is Flesh and Blood on this side, right? And here is like Hearthstone on the other side in terms of like RNG. Sorry, Hearthstone players. And I would say Runeterra is much closer to Flesh and Blood than pretty much any game I've played. It's the better player wins the majority of the time, but it's not so much like Flesh and Blood to where you start out and you're going to get stomped for a month. Mm-hmm. But if you come in with a lot of card game experience, you will find success probably rather quickly. And so it's really nice to go from like, sometimes I play Flesh and Blood, and sometimes you just want to beat people, right? Sometimes you don't want to like lose the game because you made a small mistake on your pitch on turn 3 and be like, God damn it, this sucks. Sometimes you just want to roll dice and have fun. And I get to do that a little bit more with Runeterra. So it's very nice for me to be like, oh my God, I'm so tired of like playing so strict every time. I want to go play some Runeterra and do some crazy combo nonsense. And then when I'm tired of losing because my opponent had the thing, I go and I play Flesh and Blood. And I just kind of like switch back and forth. And they both scratch a different itch for me. And it's really nice that I get to have both.
Yeah, I can really empathize with that, actually. It's a weird dynamic because I felt like when I found Flesh and Blood for the first time, I was like, okay, this is the apex of card games. This is just a better card game than all the other card games I've played, because I perceived the lack of variance as just a more well-designed card game, ignorantly, right? And I think nowadays I do have that same dynamic where I'm playing Flesh and Blood, and then there's just times when I like to play other card games, either whether it be Marvel Snap or Grand Archive. I do appreciate the variance a bit more. I do appreciate the degeneracy a bit more as sort of a respite from sort of the grindiness of something like a Flesh and Blood. In Legends of Runeterra, are you known for something specifically, like a certain type of deck, a certain type of deck building, etc.? Do you have an affinity for something in Legends of Runeterra that you're known for?
I do. Do you want to guess? Do you want to guess what it is?
It's got to be something with drawing cards.
Yep. So I'm known as an Ionian enjoyer. I like to play things where the units don't really matter, and it's just a bunch of spells, and I'm comboing. Mm-hmm. Like people, I love the decks that casual players love to complain about on Reddit.
Yeah, I can definitely empathize with that as well. Is Runeterra the type of game that sort of facilitates a person that's looking for that type of gameplay consistently, or is it sometimes the decks are available, sometimes they're not? Like, do you find you're able to express yourself often in that game playing those type of decks?
Not as much as I would like. I am a competitive player, so sometimes the meta is in a spot where like I can play my pet deck and my pet strategies, and it could be well. I'd say about probably 60% of the time, the way I like to play is available and is like playable, right, at like a higher level. And then 40% of the time it's not. So like the last 2 months, it has not been, and it's been really tough on me. But we just got patch notes today, and it's looking like big cool combo stuff is back on the menu, so that'll be fun.
So in Runeterra, you're not just a streamer, you're also a competitor. You're also known for placing very high on the leaderboards. How often do you find yourself playing the decks that you truly enjoy to achieve that kind of status versus, maybe having to swap over to the competitive or the meta deck in order to achieve a sort of leaderboard position you're looking for, or when you actually enter a tournament?
Probably about 50-50. Okay. I think the biggest part that's tough isn't the picking the deck to compete. The part that's the most difficult is picking the decks to make content with. Mm-hmm. Because people expect new things, right? I can't say, here's Karma again for the 6th time. I do that, but they don't like it very much. So I need to constantly be keeping things fresh and showing off these deck archetypes that I don't actually enjoy playing. But I can't be like, here we go, I'm playing Demacia. Wow, units, right? Like, I can't do that. So that is more difficult for me than taking the best deck to a tournament.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that we run into that a little bit on this podcast where, it's probably been about 2 years and I still mention OG Chain. I still mention Kano. People are like, dude, just shut the fuck up.
Like, I was going to say some of us more than others.
Some of us more than others. But yeah, anyways, Hayden, do you have anything else you want to sort of ask Majin about his background before you head into the news? We're trying to switch things up this episode. We're actually going to have Caleb join us for the news section because we did have some pretty big changes to Blitz. But hey, I just want to pass over to you before I pop into that.
I feel like you asked a lot of questions. I mean, we're going to dive into a little bit around meta and nationals coming up and things like that. I shouldn't know. Did you play? Because I didn't go to Baltimore. Did you play at Baltimore?
I did play at Baltimore. I played Lexi and went 0-4.
Even more fun.
I've never gone 0-4 in my entire life.
So is it correct to say that you maybe played a deck that you didn't really enjoy and maybe didn't get the performance you were looking for on?
I think you might be right there.
Yeah. The double whammies can be pretty rough. I ran into that at PT Lille, actually, where you and Hayden had that infamous meeting where I played the Briar deck, and I didn't make it to top 8. We did get over to day 2, but I just didn't like my experience. It just wasn't fun. I don't think I'm gonna do that again. I think I'm just gonna be playing the decks I want to play.
It's funny. I feel like I haven't had the same experience.
It's because you only win, bro.
No. But
only top 16s. He's like, I've just had good times. Like, what are you guys talking about?
No, but that I was going to point to Lille, for instance. Like, I didn't have a particularly good time playing that event. Maybe it's a little bit results orientated as well, but I didn't particularly enjoy playing that deck. And even like the game that me and Majin played as an example, like it wasn't an interesting game to play. We both played, Runeblade, and that meta felt really prime for Runeblade. But after that event, I just didn't want to play Runeblade unless it looked like a Viscerai combo deck for the foreseeable future. So I can definitely relate to that. I think it's true, and I'm looking at Nationals to take a deck that I find a lot more enjoyable than previous decks.
I wonder if that's like the first bullet point to becoming, or maybe it's the second bullet point to becoming a boomer in Fab. The first one is you mentioned old decks that are now irrelevant, they're maybe banned, etc. And then the second bullet point to be a true Fab boomer is to start playing decks you just really like, where it's like you're bringing the suboptimal choice. You're just there. You're there to win, but you're gonna have a good time doing it, guaranteed. Anyways, Hayden, big changes in Blitz. Do you want to sort of read off the tail of the tape for us on what exactly changed in regards to that format?
Yeah, we got a few things in the news section this week, but let's kick off with what is, I guess, the biggest news that's kind of dropped. Actually, LSS have done us a favor, Brendan. Usually they drop this news just after we're finished recording in traditional fashion. I don't know if you know this, Majin, but every time we record a pod and we're waiting for news, they will drop the news about an hour after we finish recording. It's just tradition.
I talked to Brian Gottlieb about that, actually. Yeah. He said it's on purpose.
Yeah, I have actually told Brian that we're actually going to shift our recording to earlier. We're not going to, but we're just going to tell them that so that they drop the information in time.
Hey, we're 2 for 2 off the last one, so that we got the ban announcement right before, and now we got the Blitz announcement. I think that Brian heard our feedback. He's been very receptive since we made him look good on the pod.
Thanks, Brian. So I said this when we jumped onto the call. I said to Martian and to Brendan, since I last played a game of Blitz, Drone of Brutality has been unbanned and now banned again. So that is the big news. Drone of Brutality is banned. We can dive into that a little bit in a second. The other news is that the Skirmish Season 7 test changes, which was this idea of an inventory that could include equipment and cards for your deck, is now going to be put into the rules. This is going to now be the new Blitz format. The other change that's come about is that you have to present exactly 40 cards. So with the Blitz Season 7 change, you could present more than 40 cards because you could have, a mix of equipment and cards in your inventory. Now you can only present 40 cards when it comes to the game. So you have to put, say you've got 4 sideboard cards, then you have to put them back in your sideboard. But I think that kind of makes sense for a format with, limited deck size and still fatigue being around, even though Drone might be banned. So I don't know. Caleb, I think you might be the only one of us who's played any Blitz in the last few weeks. So maybe you can give your insight on the banning of Drone or the re-banning of Drone.
I honestly never saw Drone. I played two Blitz events. One was like a Super Armory and one was like the Battle Hardened. I played Chain in both of them and was just miserable. But it felt It's not Wizard. I expected it to be like CC chain, and it's not like that at all, because you only get a couple turns. So like if one of your turns sucks, you can't make up for it. You just die. And that felt not great. But I had I'm going to Portland, where it's the team Battle Hardened or team PTI event or something, where it's Blitz, and Peter Bedensik wants to play Kano. So I was like, fine, I'll play Chain at the Battle Hardened. And then I was like, bro, I can't do this, man. And he's like, okay, I'll play Chain. You can play Kano. I'm like, oh, thanks.
That's the big toss up with these Team Blitz events. Who gets to play the Kano deck? Because that really is that's the fun deck. That is the fun deck in Team Blitz. I didn't
get to play it last time.
Oh yeah, I know. But you guys did do pretty well. To be fair, you did pretty well.
I also just kill my opponents on turn 1 sometimes with Reiner. So
yeah. I mean, Reiner, if you kill your opponents on turn 0, turn 1. I mean, that's kind of like Kano. It's like the same thing.
It's very similar.
Yeah, Caleb, I know you're a big. You're actually a big locals guy. Despite being a streamer, I think most of the digital card game players I know don't actually play physical card games, and the few that do play physical card games don't make it out to locals. But you are both a streamer, and you play quite a bit of locals. Have you been playing Blitz at your local Armory events? And I think you said you just played Chain just twice. Was it just in those events? Had you played it at all with these previous rule sets at your locals or anything like that?
No, I have not. I do try to make it out to locals. It is tough for me. I think I get out maybe once a week for a card game.
Yeah.
Be it One Piece, Flesh and Blood, Grand Archive. Always open to learning new things. I haven't been able to play Blitz much at all. And then I won't be able to play it after this because all my locals want to test against Icelander for Nationals.
Interesting.
So my time is being reserved as the punching bag.
That's super interesting. How do you manage the balance between 3 other paper card games? Whether it be One Piece, Grand Archive, etc. And what do those games are a bit newer, Grand Archive and One Piece. What do they bring to the table that Flesh and Blood does not at the moment?
Just different things. One Piece is nice to just go out and just like play a thing, and it's very easy to understand what's going on, and I don't have to like practice a matchup or know my macros or anything. And then like Grand Archive, I get to do really dumb combo things, but I can't really do anything on my opponent's turn. So it's like every game has like its pluses and its minuses, and sometimes I just want something else. It's kind of like going to a restaurant. Like I don't always want the same thing. Sometimes I really want to go get something else, and that's what these games kind of offer me.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, let's head into the main topic, which is Wizard this week. And
let's finish the news first quickly.
Oh, there's more news?
Just quickly.
What is it?
Do you want to give a shout out to... So obviously, Blitz Skirmish Season 7 changes are going to be full effect. They've just wrapped up as well. Skirmish Season 7's just finished this past weekend. I guess one of the things that Alex has shouted out in this article, though, Brendan, as well, about the changes to Blitz was that I believe 13 heroes got above double digits in Living Legend. So the Blitz season looked quite widespread. A lot of heroes making some impacts. Kasai, Chain, and Ira were the top 3 heroes, though. No Kano in there, which is surprising to me. I think Kano's still very powerful, but probably every man and his dog showing up with 3 Oasis Respite in the sideboard, and some of them over Aaron's Prayer if they're a red line deck as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nerds.
Battle Hard in Hong Kong happened over the weekend as well. Congratulations to Shinseng. We actually got to play Shinseng at Worlds. We played in that dev challenge where he schooled me on Dash. Went on to take Chain, your favorite new deck, MajinBae, to a Battle Hard and win in Hong Kong. And then Bun on Dash won the Classic Constructor PTI event on the Sunday. We saw a lot of the big names from Asia competing in this weekend at the Battle Hardened in Hong Kong. I think it's the first Battle Hardened in Hong Kong, so super exciting. But we saw likes of like Alan Lau making top 8 both days, Pudding Tam, Calvin Law, and of course Shinseng. Atlanta Battle Hardened coming up this weekend. Either of you two going to that? I assume not. Classic Constructor both days, PCI and CC. And this is going to be our last little glimpse before we get to the first of Nationals next weekend. Of course, US Nationals happening in the Calling. That is the news, Brendan.
All right. Well, with that, let's dive into the Wizards. So a recurring topic in the past few weeks of Arsenal Pass has been Icelander performing despite. So when we look at the meta, or we look at the macro meta, we see what seems to be a hostile environment for Icelander, right? Lexi still being the most represented deck in most of these tournaments. And we look to the previous meta prior to Oldham's banning. We say, what was keeping Icelander what was sort of forcing it out of the meta? What was keeping it down? And the answer wasn't really Oldhim. Most of us would have pointed at Lexi as the deck. Lexi being the deck that was holding Iyslander back. Oldhim gets banned. Lexi's still the most popular deck, but Iyslander has this resurgence, right? And a very, very, very dominant resurgence, like consistently winning event after event after event. Majin, I want to ask you sort of this base foundational question before we dive into it is like, why has Iyslander been able to perform again despite Lexi and to a lesser extent, but still a big factor, Dromai being some of the most popular decks out there? What changed?
So the Bullseye Bracers ban was actually a really big deal for Iyslander because that presents about 6 damage ish. Like let's just say on average like 6 damage. It gives them free AB, that kind of stuff. So that's a really big one. People kind of underrate how big that change is because it basically gives me 1 extra turns before I have to Storm Striders you, right? Mm-hmm. And that's huge. Like I can present so much more damage in that time. Warmongers and friends, let's just say and friends to go like Warmongers, Encase, Icebind, those kind of trio are forcing decks to build differently. Lexi's playing Trench now instead of Tunic, which is good for countering the Warmonger stuff, bad for playing against Iyslander. And it really slows the deck down. They don't have these like 6 out of 5 turns where they're just absolutely blasting you and there's nothing you can do about it. It's not really happening anymore. You're able to tax them a little bit easier. But the biggest thing, so the Lexi matchup got a little bit better, just a little bit. But I think the biggest secret is that outside of Lexi and Azalea, which people don't really play much, Iyslander doesn't have any bad matchups in the meta. There aren't any bad, like Dromai's fine. Dromai's been fine for a really long time if you put in the practice in the matchup. It's a super skill matchup, and usually whoever's like more prepared can usually come out on the top over a course of like 5-10 matches. Lexi's obviously not great. Azalea's super not great. Azuri's super free. Bravo's a great matchup for you because you have a 2-card 8 and they don't. There's just like a lot of these things where it's like, yeah, this deck's really good, but I'm 55-45 against them. And I'll take that. Like, I'll take that spread every single day, all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, looking at your lists, so these lists will be in the description. All the ones we're talking about on the episode will be in the description, so check out there if you want reference. But looking at your list, honestly, one of the first things that jumps out to me is, number one, it's sort of Bolander-esque, right? You have those big attacks, but also no blue Aether Ice Vein. What's with that? I don't think I've seen that in any other list. I
don't like that card.
Okay, why? Why is that card bad?
It's just bad rate. So I actually played Warmongers over it, and the only thing I don't like, this is going to be a super hot take, the only thing I don't like more than Blue Aether Ice Vein is actually Warmongers. I played it in 2 tournaments now, and I've never once cast it. And I won both. It's just not a very good card. The threat of Warmongers is absolutely insane. Right, like Lexi has to build their deck entirely different to play around Warmongers, but like the decks that get absolutely poo-pooed upon by Warmongers aren't being played at these higher level tournaments because they can't be. Like people aren't bringing Briar because your opponent casts Warmongers and you're like, your hand of Nimblism, Snatch looks really bad now. So I think like, yeah, or Viscerai, right? And like these are matchups you're already happy to see. I don't feel like I need this card to like absolutely smack down on them. So I may be switching from like no Ice Vein, all Warmongers to maybe like a split. I still kind of want to have it just to keep my opponents honest. But I think the threat of Warmongers Societal is doing a lot of good things for you in the matchups where you were hurting.
Yeah, I would massively agree with that. I think that's been my experience, and not just for Iyslander, but for a lot of decks in this format is now the threat of Warmongers makes people have to change their decks. We're seeing these Lexies move to just straight trench builds, although that also means they're playing Codex of Inertia, which is not Icelander's favorite card to see potentially, but I think the threat.
Sorry to cut in there. People keep talking about Codex of Inertia. They're like, damn, bro, how do you beat Codex of Inertia? And it's like, I just block more and then I wounded bull them. Like, I've had some funny spots where they're like Codex of Inertia and you like respond by casting your card and then they put another good card in your arsenal. And so you just cast that too. And you're like, man.
Yeah. So
it's not the worst. It's not the worst.
Are you a little bit of a tangent, but are you a Bravo believer? Because we actually had Pablo Pinto on the podcast last week to talk about Bravo, and Bravo is another deck that we see having success, which is probably, it wasn't a deck that was on Hayden and I's bingo card. Budget old him, which, Pablo himself said, that's what Bravo is. That's a reasonable sort of archetype or ideology for a deck, right? Oldhim and the strategy of Oldhim was so powerful. It's like maybe you can put into the suboptimal shell and have similar success. And Pablo himself on this podcast said that people really are not prepared for that deck, or at least they weren't in these past tournaments. What are your thoughts on the resurgence, the sort of performance of a deck like Bravo in the current meta or in the meta of the past 2 to 3 weeks?
I'm not sure. I understand Bravo has a pretty good matchup against Dromai, is what I've been told. But I'm inherently very biased against Bravo because every deck I play is really good against Bravo and always has been. Even when I played Lexi, that deck was good against Bravo, especially with Bullseye Bracers. I play mostly Wizards. Those decks are good against Bravo. So, I'm not sure how much weight my opinion holds here with this opinion.
Yeah, for sure.
I have a question to ask. You, Brendan, you said about people being unprepared, and we talked about this with Pablo last week, and I'd love to get Marj's take on this as well. How much of just general meta results through the first few events and some of these events you've played as well, do you think comes down to people not being prepared and not understanding matchups in the meta as it is, and not because, players aren't preparing and they're just, or they're bad or anything like that, more because the meta is just so new. How much of it do you think is coming down to potentially people just not being prepared for these strategies and not being, ready?
Maybe a couple. I think the first events were definitely people were probably trimming blues and stuff, and they weren't ready for a Frostbite on their turn. I think that was really big. I think the Dromai list got a little greedy. They went a little too aggressive and got punished for it. I don't know a ton about honestly how aggro decks and stuff prepare for Bravo because I don't play them. So maybe there is they should have been packing defense reacts. I honestly don't know. But I do think that Icelander, especially Rhea's list, in the first 2 Battle Hardens, which was, by the way, just an insane run. Back-to-back is so nuts. The Arcane version with Warmongers is incredibly, the word I like to use is exploitive. It very much takes something that is a weakness of decks in the format and uses it against them. It is, in my opinion, and some people might not agree with this, worse than Bullander. It is not as strong of a deck in a vacuum, but when decks aren't prepared for the kind of disruption that it presents, it can be so incredibly strong. And I think that was proven in the Battle Harden. I think as we progress, we saw Lexi change to trench builds and things like that. Probably more blues are going to be packed. We'll see people be a little bit more prepared for the Arcane version, in my opinion.
What version do you think is better in the mirror?
Bullander.
Yes.
Not even close.
Not even, it's not even close, right? So if we see any sort of the meta rebound or sort of react to Icelander's performance, see more people come back to the deck or pick it up for the first time, it does feel like you get even more sort of forced into potentially playing that as your deck versus the Arcane version, because you guys are right. It genuinely does not feel close. The variance of a Bullander mirror is who draws the red card with the blues, right? And if the other one just draws a couple reds or, a couple of the Wounded Bulls, or they just draw blues, the game just feels like it's over at that point. Do you think that Icelander is one of the most fundamentally powerful decks in the meta right now?
Yes, I do. But I think you have to really put in the time to reap the benefits. I think your average Joe at an armory, if you hand them Icelander, will do okay, but not quite see the success that you would see if they were playing a busted deck of the past, perhaps.
What do you think contributes to that sort of high skill floor of Icelander? Is it just playing on both sides of the turn, or what really gives it that sort of it factor, which makes it a deck that just doesn't seem to be able to be picked up very easily by new players?
Icelander puts a very big priority on understanding everything that your opponent can do at all times. And so you need to know exactly when to space out your disruption, not just during their turn or your turn, right? It's not when exactly do I cast this cold snap. It's do I put this cold snap in my arsenal at all? Is this, how much damage are they presenting? And is it better for me to arsenal this Wounded Bull? can I afford to set up an Insidious Chill here, or are they going to put too much pressure with that Endless Arrow in their arsenal, and I need to like get rid of it and arsenal something more defensive instead? And those are the things that I think really boosts Icelander to the top, is understanding that kind of stuff. And it's probably not very obvious, right? Like when you're playing it, you might make a mistake like that, and you put Emeritus Scolding in your arsenal a turn too early, and you lose because of it. It might not be super obvious immediately. So it's harder to like, I feel like it takes a little bit longer to level up with like Icelander than it perhaps would be with like a more linear style deck.
One thing
I like you said linear, because it's not like Icelander is just pointedly not linear. Your game plans are never linear. Even between the same game turn to turn, they're not going to be linear. So I think I'm glad you said that word.
Yeah, one thing I noticed when I first picked up Icelander is I sort of picked it up blind. I net decked the list from, I believe, Howling Minds at the time. And I remember playing it online, Talishar. That was like right when Talishar came out, actually, and not seeing a lot of success. And then I remember watching a video of someone else playing the deck and just seeing people, this player that was better than me at the deck at the time, just consistently make decisions that I wasn't really considering or that I just hadn't made. And it was fascinating also, like just how the arsenal was manipulated, when they would cast their spells, how many cards they would go to their turn with. I think the arcane version is a little bit harder to sort of finagle around like mentally than the Wounded Bull version, but that's what I really noticed is like the actual just base play patterns of Icelander are just not super clear when you look at the deck for the first time. I'm not sure if you sort of agree on that. I agree with you, Hayden, though, that the game plans are absolutely dynamic, and you're playing a tempo deck, but also a very responsive deck to your opponent's game plan.
I would definitely agree. And I also agree that the arcane version takes a lot more finesse to play, which is why I play Wounded Bull.
Damage, baby.
At this point in the meta, what are your bad matchups? What are you hoping not to see? Or even we can take it to another level up. It's like, if you're taking this deck to Nationals, what meta do you hope to show up to the tournament for you to be able to be successful with it?
I don't want to see a ton of Rangers. Like Azalea is a pretty wild card for me. I haven't played the matchup a ton, and I understand that it's not great. I feel very comfortable playing against Lexis. I don't think the matchup's great, but I know what I'm doing, and I know what my opponent's doing, and I feel good about it. The thing that I don't want to run into is specifically Dromai specialists, because the matchup, if it's just a Dromai and they picked up the deck a month ago and they played the matchup a couple times, you're usually just going to roll them unless they like Tomal tie you on one or something. And I believe it's the same way the other way around. A Dromai specialist will roll an Icelander who's not prepared. What I don't want to have to deal with is a Dromai specialist, because those games are really, really hard for both sides. It's such a difficult matchup, and it's so like thought intensive, I suppose. I would love to not run into like two of those in a row.
Yeah.
It's usually quite a grindy matchup against good players. Dromai is such an odd deck where like people always talk about Dromai specialists. Like, I don't want to play, the Dromai specialists. They're the only ones good with the deck. Is it just that like good players, just stock standard good players just aren't picking up Dromai? Like, it's such a weird concept. It's like the only people who play Dromai and see success with it are Dromai specialists. It's such an odd kind of thing.
I think you might be onto something. I think a lot of people who consider themselves competitive or aspiring competitive players pick up Dromai, and if they don't see the success they want with it, they drop it for something else, because in the end they are here to win. But then the specialists, the ones that are very, very strong players, period, and very, very strong players on Dromai, and they put the time in, like, it's scary. I still think the matchup's probably 50-50 if you have like an Icelander specialist and a Dromai specialist, but I don't want to play it.
Yeah, I think the same.
I think it comes down to cards as well.
Same thing applies to Wizard, and more specifically Kano. It's like in the hands of an inexperienced player. Like, I generally think it's like one of the worst decks in Flesh and Blood. Like, it's just so easy to beat.
Like bottom three.
Yeah, it's terrible. But there are just a few players that, when the fire starts to burn, they put in the time, and like they've been playing this deck forever. Usually, their name is just associated with it, and those players just just, they just roll everybody despite the meta. They'll beat the Prisms, they'll beat the Jeremiahs, they'll beat it, etc. It's just, it's an interesting dynamic when you look at these Illusionist decks, which actually has traditionally been not just Jeremiah, but Illusionist in general. Prism is also a deck that the general population was statistically quite shit at. But now it's Jeremiah as well. And the same thing with Wizards. So yeah, Hayden, your sort of philosophy on that is like, are good players just avoiding these decks, or are these decks just not that good? I don't know.
Well, I guess I don't have a philosophy either way. It's just an observation I've had, that so far to this point, it looks like we've not seen these players pick it up for whatever reason. Maybe that'll change. The meta is always obviously evolving. I have a couple of questions, and I feel like I've got to preempt this by saying that, I'm going to take Brendan's role this week and play a bit of the heel on the pod, potentially. But I want to find out, in your run to the PTI that you gathered up a couple of weeks ago, how many Lexies did you play against as Icelander? Because you just delved into
3.
the Lexi matchup saying you don't particularly, you don't mind, you're at ease playing it, but it's not a particularly good matchup.
3 of 9 rounds
so
for Lexi.
A third of your... And did you win all of them? Did you lose to any of them?
No, I won all my matches.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. All right. This guy.
Just want to throw that in there.
How's his heel storyline going? Oh, shit.
How many of them were playing Trench against you?
2 of them were playing Trench, both Yanji and Michael Feng.
Okay. Were those matchups harder or easier?
They were easier, but only because my first Lexi opponent showed up with AB0.
Okay.
And then didn't block my attacks.
Right.
Very much.
Right.
So I just killed them.
Okay.
But I think that Tunic makes the matchup more difficult.
Yeah.
But
that's been my experience.
If you walk into Warmongers or Encase, right? If you get encased, you're going to be really upset. But I think Tunic makes it worse for me.
Yeah. Okay. That's been my experience as well. I was just curious. So don't worry, I'm not going to go down the route.
Wait.
I thought there might be a
that was your heel?
Yeah. Don't worry. It's coming. It's going to come through this podcast when I talk about how trash Icelander is. No, I think Icelander is just fundamentally one of the most powerful heroes in Classic Constructed because of Storm Striders, because of the fact that you get to play blues that are powerful, because of the fact that you get to disrupt your opponent, because of the fact that you get to play good trading damage. But my next question for you, I need something new to settle something for me, because this is a debate that has been had around the world. Who is favored in the Kano versus Icelander matchup?
Okay. Icelander is favored because I am one of the few people I feel like that really plays a ton of both. Icelander is favored in the Kano versus Icelander matchup. However, it is a skill matchup. If the Kano is more prepared in the matchup, they will be favored. Peter got interviewed by Flake and was asked, hey, Peter Bedensic, a well-known Kano main, how do you feel about the Kano Icelander matchup? And he says, I feel incredibly comfortable winning against any of the Icelanders in the field, except for specifically against Majin. And we went on to play the future match. And I did end up taking the game. And that is how it's felt for me. When I play Icelander into Kano, I feel more safe. When I play Kano into Icelander, if I play against an Icelander that maybe doesn't understand exactly how Kano works, I think that's the big thing. Mm-hmm. If they are also a Kano player, they're never going to just send a Wounded Bull at you with 1 blue in hand when you have 2 energy potions and die, right? So like then the matchup gets much more difficult. And then when it's really like good Icelander, good Kano, I would just rather be on the Icelander side.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. The reason I ask is because in the lead up to the Calling Auckland, myself and Dan Mackay, we wanted to play Kano. And we've both played a lot of Kano, and now at this point after that, a lot of Icelander. And we got to the point where we literally could not win a game on Kano. Once we understood the matchup so in depth, we were like, and the only way we're winning here is if the Icelander draws triple red in the hand. Like we were just not able to find, we were just countering every single pitch stat Kano was doing. We were countering every single in-game Kano could come up with. We even started playing attack actions in Kano to see if we could balance it out. And you're like, oh, you just start at 6 less life and they have disruptive burn spells. It's just the most frustrating thing. So I just wanted to hear your opinion, because I've had people tell me, oh no, it's Kano favored, or if the Kano player is really good, they will always win. And I was like, we've played so much of both sides, and I got to the point where honestly I just could not win a game with Kano anymore.
Yeah, I don't want to be on the Kano side. We've tried a lot of things too. I'm glad I could help. I'm also a super big believer. If you've seen my list, the other big point of contention, besides the no blue Aether Ice Vein, is that I play 3 energy potions.
Yeah.
And I tell people, every time they're like 3 energy potions, isn't that like too many? I tell them, I'm like, if you played Kano, you would play 3 energy potions too.
Yep. Always 3 energy potions in Icelander also.
Yeah. That card is absolutely busted. Well, hey, I just got to point this out. Hayden was like, "Oh, I'm going to be the heel of this podcast." He's like, "I'm going to take some risks." How many
We've still got time.
How many Lexies you play? That's the heel. All right, let's talk about Kano though. Because we touched on there. So I have a Kano list from you again. If you're listening or if you're watching on YouTube, link in the description for the deck list. So Kano is I don't even know what word to attach to this deck to sort of to correctly articulate its infamy at this point. But Kano is a deck. Kano is a deck that we talked about, probably one of the worst decks in Flesh and Blood in the inexperienced hands, or just in, let's say, the vanilla hands. But it's a deck that just keeps
the normies' hands.
Normies, yeah. Maybe not. Hayden should have said that for his heel story arc. But it's a deck that keeps showing up at these high-level events, keeps showing up Pro Tours, keeps showing up at Worlds, and we're seeing more teams, more players pick it up. And despite the card pool consistently gets more hostile towards Kano. It gets worse for Kano, but the deck is showing up more and more and more in these tournaments. What are your thoughts on the current state of Kano in the meta as well as you understand it right now? We can even say the projected meta for U.S. Nationals, right? The tournament you are going to attend. Where do you think Kano lies at the moment?
If you can't put 100 plus games into Kano before you show up to this tournament, he's probably like D tier. Maybe F tier, along with like Arachne. If you put like tons and tons and tons of time into it, I'd put Kano probably in B plus. I think Kano's actually a pretty solid choice. The only problem is like you are a dog to super experienced Icelanders, and the Dromai matchup is absolutely miserable. So the only reason I'd play Kano over Icelander was that a maybe not.
I really like to be on the Kano side in the Dromai matchup.
Oh, I don't like being on the Kano side, but the game ends quickly. The game ends pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I got Thamide on turn 0, bro.
Yep.
Like,
there you go. The game's over.
Yeah, you do need something to deal with Thamide for sure. Like that definitely needs to be in the board, or you just
if you're picking. Yeah, so if you're picking Kano over Icelander, what you're trading is a better Lexi matchup for less points on various other things, right? You're like you're worse against Icelander, you're worse against Dash, like these kind of things. But you do get a better Lexi matchup. However, the reason why I don't love Kano at like super high level events, I did top 8 a Battle Hardened with Kano recently. That was really fun. But I usually end up gravitating towards Icelander is because if you play Kano, sometimes you're just gonna lose a game because you brought Kano, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
So you have to come to terms with that.
So the deck does have does have an inherent variance where Icelander is just more of a fundamentally powerful deck. Yeah. In terms of Kano, do you think that there's pretty much only one way to build the deck at the moment? Is it just this sort of stock standard list with the Aether Wildfires focused on the combo sort of oriented endgame, or it's endgame? That's a loaded word when it comes to Kano, but sort of combo game plan. I just haven't seen many new takes on Kano. It's just kind of been the same list. Is this the most powerful way to play Kano?
I think so. I think if you're in a super aggro heavy meta where people are like not playing a lot of blues, very much disrespecting anything wizard, I absolutely think you could go a more low to the ground version with things like Reverberate, which I think is the most powerful card that Kano isn't playing. I have tried to play it, but it's like it could just kind of be awkward sometimes. But if your opponents are on like 1 AB, all of a sudden Reverberate gets to be really, really powerful. You can do some crazy things with it.
Yeah. How do you feel? How important is it for the sort of aggregate meta at a tournament to be on a lower amount of AB versus a higher amount of AB when you're bringing something like Kano to a tournament? Are you sort of gambling that people are skimping on the AB in order to get more sideboard slots?
Okay, this might be extremely contentious, but no.
Yeah.
No, you're correct. I agree.
Right
I was about to shout no.
You're in the right place for that opinion.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Why doesn't it matter?
Because if you're slower, I'm going to kill you.
No.
And you don't have the resources to block what I'm doing anyway. If you're playing a deck that like traditionally won't have AB3, then you don't have the blue density to like actually present the threats you need to be presenting and be able to AB 4 times on your turn, right? It just doesn't happen.
Yeah. So for context, just something I could pipe in. So, like, let's say you're playing an ultra defensive Bravo deck and you have all the AB in the world. You can have AB 50. It doesn't matter. But if you present zero sort of pressure to a Kano player, the ideal scenario for Kano is to double spell you on their turn. So they're going to play a spell at the top of the deck by activating Kano. They're going to play a spell out of hand and it's going to tax your resources. Let's say you have 4 blues. And then they have Aether Wildfire parked in the arsenal. We're going to go to your turn. You've lost 2 cards out of your hand. And now they're going to try to attempt to combo you from there. You take that sort of 4 blue card hand down to now a 3 blue card hand. Let's change the variance on the hands a bit. And this is just a devastating scenario for you. So you're sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't when it comes to Kano, when it comes to how much pressure, how many reds, how many blues you should have in your deck. It's really when it comes to Kano, the things I'm worried about is less arcane barrier and things like that, but it's more silver bullet cards, and it's actually more just macro game plans, strategies, right? Like decks that are too aggressive for you, like you talked about the dash. Like Boo's dash can be a terrible matchup because you said there's an inherent variance to Kano. Well, we ramp that variance up 5 to 10x when you shorten the game down, right? And it makes it even harder for you to find the thing. Do you think that Kano is it a potential choice for a player like yourself, a player that's seen success with Icelander, debatably the more powerful wizard? Is it a possible choice for you at US Nationals?
All things being equal, if you can play Kano and Icelander at the same level, you are shooting yourself in the foot playing Kano instead of Icelander. Mm-hmm. That is my opinion. I do think Kano is a choice, and I did consider bringing Kano, but I think Icelander is the better choice in this upcoming tournament.
All right.
It's just more consistent. It's just, it's got a similar kind of Storm Strider's inevitability, but obviously your life total ranges are different, but you get to play a game that goes longer, and the longer the game goes for Icelander in most matchups, it works out better. You get to see all your cards, you get to play all of your disruptive elements, you get to, land. The longer a game goes, the more value a turn you laid an Insidious Chill has. You get that value back that you might have lost on damage. So I really struggle. I've wanted to play Kano so long. I've taken Kano to 2 tournaments. That's all, ever. Actually, that's a lie. I took it to a locals once, but I played Kano to two big events.
Yeah,
right?
Hayden Dale. I took Kano to 2 tournaments, just the Pro Tour and the World Championships. It's like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, those are
Medicals, right? Yeah, and I did better at the World Champs and the Pro Tour than I did at the Armory, where I went 1-2. You know what I mean?
I think that's a real thing.
People have 100 card decks at Armories, bro. They have 100 card decks. They go find those.
People have 85 card decks with their Noah, and they bring it. Oh, I just need to grab. They're in my other deck. Yeah, I'm sure they are.
Yeah, 6 AB, 8 Oasis Respite. They're pulling out of their sock. It's like you can't play Kano at an Armory. It's literally unplayable.
I lose every time I bring Kano to an Armory. I go like 1-2, and then I top 8 the Battle Hardened, and I go home and I 0-3 Armory. Like you cannot play Kano in Armories. It just doesn't work.
I agree.
Suddenly all the tech cards kind of okay. Let's talk about the Kano list because there are some interesting aspects to your list here. First off, I guess I'll set the Aether Spindle. You have 1 blue Aether Spindle. Blue Aether Spindle. Although it's not a blue that you can combo with because it costs 2, and we're not going to get into the intricacies of the combo. If you're interested in how Kano works, how the combo deck works, etc., like you're seeing this for the first time, there's a video on our YouTube channel. You can go look at it. We'll explain all of the heuristics, all of the math to you, and it will all make sense. But Blue Aether Spindle, not the ideal combo card to sort of flip, but a card that you can sort of combo with, in a sense, right? You hit the Wildfire, you hit the Blue Aether Spindle. You might not be blazing Ether on this turn, but it's still kind of gas because if your opponent doesn't have enough AB or they don't have enough resources, you might be opting 5, 6 into your deck, and then you find yourself stacking tomes, etc., digging, maybe drawing half your deck, yada, yada, yada. What made you cut the Blue Aether Spindle specifically? Because this is a card that let's say I said cut, but you have 1 in there. What's the choice with the 1?
I wanted 4 blues that didn't suck because I believe I have 3 Emeritus blue in the list. 6 was too many, and 3 was just too few. So I have 4 blues that's how I put it, that don't suck. So when I hit them off the top, I get to do stuff. I've been waffling between Aether Spindle and Aether Wildfire. The list that I top 8'd the Battle Hardened with was on a 3-1 split Spindle favored. So I'm kind of just playing both. Feel which ones you like. I know a lot of people like to just activate Kano at the end of their opponent's turn and see what they hit. You should probably not be on the Spindle version if you're doing that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's
just
preference thing.
But
or just don't. Please don't do that.
So
personally,
there's an even more dogmatic card in this list, actually. That's Potion of Deja Vu. And luckily for this podcast, we actually have a Potion of Deja Vu hater joining us on the pod, Mr. Hayden Dale himself. Talk to me about how you ended up on 2 Potion of Deja Vu rather than 3, and on 2 versus, rather than 1 or 0. What are your thoughts about Potion of Deja Vu in itself? Because it's not super conductive to the Kano combo, but it can give you a lot of outs to sort of pseudo combo your opponent.
Are you asking the Deja Vu hater, or are you asking me?
I'm asking you first, and we'll go to Deja Vu hater. Okay. The heel.
I know you have activated Potion of Deja Vu in Kano, but for our viewers at home who maybe haven't, it feels like cheating.
Yes.
You have blue Lessons in Lava Tome, and you pitch them, and you activate Kano twice, and you crack your Potion of Deja Vu, and oh my god, you banish Tome, Lessons in Lava, and you're guaranteed to draw 2 blues off the Tome, and that's nasty, and it just gets nastier. That's like baseline Potion of Deja Vu stuff. However, I don't want to draw 2.
Yes.
Because it's just a blue block 0. The second one doesn't help you. So I only run 2 of them.
Yeah, so there's another person, friend of this podcast, but I guess he's a fellow Three Musketeer, Mr. Sasha Markovic. I know you're familiar with this man. Very much a 3 Potion of Deja Vu stan, right? Just thinks it's too powerful, but I agree with you that if you draw 2 Potion of Deja Vus, it's very bad because the card doesn't block. You really don't want to be playing it on your turn. I mean, that's the thing about potions in general. I mean, Energy Potion is powerful enough that you can actually play it on your turn as Kano, but generally, Kano wants to be playing potions at instant speed. And yeah, if you have 2 Potion of Deja Vus, it's terrible in your hand at the same time. But anyway, over to Potion of Deja Vu hater, Hayden. Your thoughts? Have you converted? Where do you sort of lie on this card?
Well, I just let you make a fool of yourself. When have I ever been a Potion of Deja Vu hater?
World Championships, 100%. Potion of Deja Vu hater. He's like, I don't understand this card.
I played one on my list.
Yeah, because we were preaching it to you.
Okay, I'll tell you why I don't particularly like Potion of Deja Vu. I think the card is very powerful. Most of the times when Potion of Deja Vu is good, and it is like Majin was saying, it can be insane. When it is good, it's usually in a matchup where I don't want to be playing, to be honest. Like, I want when I build and play Flesh and Blood, I want to play like the most repeatable plan. I want to play something that's super consistent and super powerful. And Potion of Deja Vu definitely like is on the powerful axis. It's definitely not on the consistency axis, basically whatsoever, other than the fact that it's a blue. Doesn't block. You can't set it up that well. You have to wait for just a hand. Often you're just going like, oh, this hand is nuts with Potion of Deja Vu. Let's get some value off of it. But it's so hard to know where you're going to get that in the game and how often you're going to get it. So the matchups where I think it's good tend to be in matchups that are harder for you, or matchups that are maybe not your better matchups. And those are not the matchups I want to play as Kano, so I'm probably just not playing Kano in that situation. So that's kind of my view on Potion of Deja Vu. Don't get me wrong, I think the card is very, very good. I would play it in my deck, but it doesn't contribute to your core game plan or your core consistent game plan of just killing people with a combo. Sometimes it can help you combo. Sometimes it can net you draw like 5-6 cards. Sometimes it can net you like 15 damage. Sometimes you do it, you tome, and you hit absolutely bricks from your Kano, and you've just used this Potion of Deja Vu in your whole hand to deal 2 damage. Now, don't say that has never happened to you before, MajinBae, because I know that has happened to you, because that's happened to me so many times with Potion of Deja Vu. It is such an inconsistent card, but the ceiling on it is so high.
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't go the way I want.
It's a good card, though. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, Kano's super interesting because most of the Kano decks that we see, and even the one we're looking at right now, are actually suboptimal combo decks because they opt to build that way in order to have variability, in order to pressure their opponent on their own turn. In order, if your opponent has high AB, they can't be full combo. They can't be like literally all blues and do the Aether Wildfire combo, which you could do, which is like you can play that. You could play a strategy into a low AB sort of meta, but they opt to play these red cards like the red Aether Spindles or the red Aether Flares, etc., in order to give themselves game against decks that have AB. These cards are also they're fine against cards with decks that have low AB, but they do inherently decrease the consistency of your combo, right? To where you can literally always get the blue off the ragamuffins with 0 variability, which is sort of pure Kano combo. And pure Kano combo is genuinely a terrible deck because it just folds to anything that has high AB. It has to pitch stack forever and still you won't kill your opponent. One other card I want to talk about in this list, 3 red Aether Flare. What's the thought behind it?
It's usually blocks, but when it doesn't, it is the card that forces my opponent to AB on my turn.
Yep.
Sometimes you know what I'm talking about, where like sometimes you're sitting there and you go, I'm gonna activate Kano and I'm just gonna see what we hit, because you're like, I'm not sure if I need to combo, maybe I'll just block and I'll play this potion. But you activate and you hit Aether Flare and you go right, and then you're going. And I like having that like go button. But also, yeah, on your turn you go activate Kano, it's a spell, Crucible, Aether Flare, what are you gonna do? Right, it's like they have to block as much as they can. I was actually watching Peter Bedencic play. It's his Blitz, to be fair, but this was super, super cool, where he just like, he put like an Aether Flare for 4 on his opponent on like turn 1 or something. His opponent didn't block any, so he like cast another card on Kano, which did a couple damage, and then his opponent blocked, like they didn't block any, and so he just Storm Striders Blazing Aethered them. Now it's Blitz, right? So life total is lower, but like the power of this card, if you don't block it, like can't be understated. And I really like that. Especially, you were talking about forcing your high AB opponents to lose cards on your turn, and Aether Flare is really, really good at that. And then against decks that can't afford to AB very much, Aether Flare just puts them in kill range so much faster than anything else does.
Yeah, Aether Flare is like, honestly, Red Aether Flare is one of my favorite cards in Kano, and for a long time people weren't playing it, and I could never understand why. I for all the reasons you've just said. I think the other reason, I will just say, I think the reason people don't play it is they misplay this card a lot. They try and back into it way too much. So they'll play that Aether Flare on their turn. Their opponent won't block, and sometimes they won't read the opportunity, or they will block some of it but leak a little bit through, and they won't read the opportunity. They'll then double down on it and try and push through, an extra 1 to 2 damage at the expense of like an Arsenal, for instance, or the expense of like some really good cards, and that's often incorrect. I think it's a card that's often misplayed, but yeah, I would say like 60-70% of the time, like I'm blocking with it, but the times where it does work, it does so much work. And if you ever hit this, if the first time you hit this off like a stretch combo, maybe where you've had to like blind combo, you're like just stretching, you're like, I'm not quite there, but I have to go for this. Maybe I find a tome, and you're like, oh, I have an Aether Flare. Never mind. You're just
yeah. I mean, honestly, it's like you could use the blue one. The blue Aether Flare is disgusting. Have you ever seen the combo? It's like, oh my god. I think there's a bit of a dichotomy between cards like Aether Flare and cards like Voltic Bolt, or derivatives of that being Swell Tidings. It's like, what card it's actually meta dependent, I think, of what actually draws more cards out of your opponent's hand. It's like, if they're on higher AB, Aether Flare might actually be weaker than something like Voltic Bolt, which should take a similar amount of cards, a similar AB out of the hands if that's their core game plan, but still leak a few damage, getting them closer to sort of a combo level of health. And I think there's a bit of a dichotomy between playing the red Aether Flare, which I do think is a sort of an overall more powerful card, or going for a bit of a more consistent option in the red Voltic Bolt, which is sort of a stock standard, your turn as Kano, let's take a card out of their hand and try to get them in a, maneuver them to a position where I could do damage to them on their turn. I play Crucible Voltic on my own turn. I want to dive into your sideboard here, because the sideboard really tells a lot of the story when it comes to Kano, because we know what the core game plan is, the combo, etc. But the sideboard is interesting to me. So first off, Aether Dart. I'm assuming that's just for the Demise. Is that correct?
That's it. It's just Dromai.
Yep, just Dromai. This sort of one of Dampen. What's the idea behind the
Take
one
a guess.
of Dampen?
Take a guess what that goes for as well.
Stealing 4 damage to something, right?
Yeah, it's Dromai.
Exactly.
So, funny story. When you guys gave me the list and there was Dampens in the sideboard, I didn't know what they were for. So I just played them in the Wizard Mirror, and I was like, I don't get it.
This is terrible.
This is so bad. They're for killing Thamai. That's what they do. They kill Thamai, and when things are going really poorly, they kill Tofeldai.
Yes. What about the one of Nourishing Emptiness? What matchup do you side that into?
So that's some spice. I actually that's the Peter Bedencic special. I actually really like that in the Wizard Mirror. Because you're going to see your entire deck. And the way the Wizard Mirror plays out is you're not going to be activating Kano a ton unless you have extra cards. So whiffing on a Kano activation doesn't really matter very much. You're usually going to be, and we're going to get into this, you're usually be casting one of your 1-mana spells and then activating Waning Moon. So you just wait until you draw your Nourishing Emptiness. You push it, and if you draw it halfway into the game, a 5-card hand from Kano forces your Wizard opponent to do nothing on their turn. Right? Because you have the 5 cards, your arsenal, probably some potions, and if they pull the trigger, you kill them. Like, it almost doesn't matter what your hand has.
All right. Swell Tidings. Where do you find yourself siding that card in?
High AB decks. This is Wizard. This is Guardian. This is anything that brings AB3 against you. These are the cards you want. as opposed to cards like Aether Flare.
Okay. To Eye of Ophidia or to not Eye of Ophidia, sort of an age-old question in Kano. Obviously, an incredibly powerful card, right? You have this card in your hand, you're like, holy shit, yes. The world is my oyster, but. Sometimes, some people play this card indiscriminate of any matchups, just core the Kano deck. Sometimes, you're playing against an aggro deck, etc. You got a combo, and there's that one whiff in your deck, and one whiff. It's just what is your thoughts?
I'm a gamer. I always play it, but I know that some people only play it when they feel they need to get there.
When they're a dog, yeah.
Yeah, when you're a dog, you bring in Eye of Ophidia. But I get dopamine from seeing the card in my hand, so I always play it.
Yeah, I also get, I get that dopamine, but I've gotten a lot of negative dopamine from seeing that card on, when I flip it off the top of my deck with a Sonic Boom or something like that, which, oh man, that feels great. All right.
Get the same with Energy Potion though. And Deja Vu.
I feel like
Sonic Boom into an Energy Potion makes me want to cry.
Well, that's so
Brandon
funny you
did that
bring
on
that
stream,
up.
right?
Yeah, so first Pro Tour, I was, Pro Tour number 1, a really dynamic, just sort of confusing meta. No, it was literally 3 decks. People bought Prism, Chain, Starvo. And I go round 1, Boost Dash. I'm like, what the fuck? First of all, and then I need the combo quickly to win, and I Sonic Boom and whoop. Energy Potion. It was a sight for sore eyes at the time, and I quickly was dispatched by my opponent. All right, Waning Moon. Do you find yourself playing Waning Moon in any matchup that is not the mirror? We're not utilizing something like Illuvian Constellus. And if not, have you considered playing Waning Moon in some of the more grindy high AB matchups?
So I have considered it. The answer is no. I play Waning Moon against Icelander. I play Waning Moon against Kano. Against the grindy high AB matchups, I do not play Waning Moon because the combo is so
contingent on
not easy. It's a surefire thing, right? Like if you're going to give me 12 turns, I'm going to kill you, and there's nothing you can do about it. Like eventually, I'm just going to double, triple wildfire you if you're going to take a really long time. And like maybe when like Fatigue Oldhim was a thing, if they played like 6 copies of Oasis Respite Steadfast type things, like then maybe I don't know, maybe you need Waning Moon. I don't even know. But no, I know other people sometimes like to play Waning Moon in other matchups. I do not. I just want the simple Kano game plan.
Mm-hmm. All right. And just going back up to macro ratios in terms of blues, etc. How many blues do you find yourself playing in a 60 card deck of Kano? Is it 33 blues or are you siding in 33? Blues? 33 blues.
33.
Hayden,
I don't side in extras.
Do you remember off the top of your head what sort of your the number of blues you were trying to hit in the Kano iterations that you played both at World Championships, or just sort of your heuristic for how many blues you want in a Kano deck? What it was?
31 to 33.
Okay.
I played 32 in most matchups. Just the one Deja Vu.
Yeah, I remember it being being that 32, I believe.
Hasn't changed much. Kano has not changed a ton.
No, it's been pretty self for a while.
Yeah,
well,
I mean that's what's interesting. It's like there doesn't seem to be a ton of ways to build it. It's like I think you take this this sort of inflection point of what is pure combo, so it's literally just like all blues and your combo cards, and then you sort of move away from that in order to make a more dynamic deck that can actually survive in a meta that isn't just people on low AB or people that are not attacking you, right? It's like pure combo is a theory deck, and then you adapt the Kano deck into something that we see more like your list, which is a deck that can actually it can function, right? It's functional outside of the combo. Hayden, I want to throw it over to you because you also have a Nationals coming up. Where does Kano sort of lie for you in terms of the meta right now? Are you considering it? Do you think it's potentially a good pick? Do you think that the meta is so dynamic and changing so much that people are going to opt to go lower on the AB, go lower on the Kano head, maybe cut some of these Oasis Respites, etc.? Your thoughts? Oh, that's the heel.
Just looking for my Kano deck box. Yeah. It's firmly in the cupboard and not coming out for Nationals. I can tell you what. I can guarantee you I'm not playing Kano at Nationals. There's always a 1%, right? But I would struggle to. I think MajinBae said it. If you're going to play Wizard and you're semi-comfortable with, Icelander, I would just be playing Icelander. I think it's a very powerful hero. It's very powerful despite, what looks like a hostile meta. I think the more I play and test this meta, Icelander looks better and better than I would think. I just don't see a reason to play Kano right now. I don't feel like this is a particularly the better Icelander's doing, like just the worse it is for Kano, because I don't think Icelander's a good matchup for you, and also just the more splash like interaction there is to peg you down. So I just think this is, honestly, I think this is one of the worst metas I've probably seen for Kano. I don't particularly, I know MajinBae before, maybe there's like a reason to play Kano, but if Icelander is doing well and Icelander is a good choice, like that to me just says like Kano is not a good choice. I just can't see how they can ever be both good choices, but
Makes sense. All right. Caleb, your thoughts and your concerns regarding the other half of this tournament you're going to have to play, which is Monarch Draft. How are you feeling?
Goodness. Okay, so I hate Limited. I'm not feeling super great about it. I've done about 4 drafts, which is more than I have done for any other Pro Tour.
So true Limited hater. True.
Oh, yeah. No, I do not enjoy Limited. I didn't dislike it back in when I played Magic the Gathering. It wasn't my favorite, but I didn't like hate it. Honestly, I don't love Flesh and Blood Draft very much.
Okay.
It's just not the format for me. I don't really like to play low power formats, and I don't enjoy the actual drafting aspect of draft. So not feeling super comfortable about Monarch. The preconceptions that I had based on what people had told me from when they played Monarch turned out to be not true.
Like
at all.
For example,
a lot of people told me that Chain was really, really good and forcible, which I do not agree with.
Who told you
and
that?
Bolton was basically unplayable, which I seriously don't agree with. That deck is very good.
Yeah.
So just a lot of things like that. They're just kind of like added up. This is how the games kind of play out. You need to make sure you have these. And it's just like, I don't know. I feel like the game has just evolved. Like how we play and look at Flesh and Blood has evolved since Monarch was around. I didn't even play when Monarch was around. And so I think a lot of those things that people thought just aren't actually true in the modern game of Flesh and Blood.
You should defriend those people.
Yeah, I'll let them know.
Force Chain, Bolton bad. Come on.
Yeah.
I'm not a particular fan of this Monarch Draft format. I'm not looking forward to it, so I can resonate with that one. I have a question I want to ask about Nationals. We've both got our Nationals. All 3 of us have our Nationals next weekend. What's the best deck in the format?
Weekend.
That's next weekend.
I know, right?
Wait, weekend after next.
Weekend
right?
after next. I mean, Peter posted on Twitter.
No, next weekend. It's next weekend.
Yeah, I mean, semantics. But he's like 10 days till Nationals. I was like, what?
Yeah, I was not prepared for that.
What's the best deck, though? That's the question.
The best deck?
What's the best deck in the format?
Lexi's the best deck in the format. If you are playing at 80% of a deck's total ability, let's say, a cap, Lexi's the best deck in the format. If you're a super specialist on any of a top 5 deck, that's the best deck in the format.
Ooh, what's the 5th deck in the top 5?
I don't know.
Okay, just there's a 5th deck there somewhere. All right,
I'm sure it's there.
Yep. Brendan, has your thoughts changed at all? Lexi still the best deck for you?
This is the best deck? I don't know. Statistically, yes. It's like, how do I even argue with that at this point? But I like the idea of using like the Pareto principle to sort of pick your deck, right? Your 80-20. If you're an 80% competency, you just take the best deck in the room. But this is a meta where specialists can shine. For me,
definitely.
The best deck in the room is not as important to my deck choice as it used to be. And I am very, very confident that I will end up on a wizard. And that is 1 for enjoyment and 2 for laziness, because I really don't feel like learning Lexi and like beating everybody in the mirror who's been playing it for super, like, I'm just not interested in that. I did that with the Briar thing, and I legitimately felt like I was spectating my own matches in Lille, and it sucked. I didn't like it. So
that's a different reason, though. That's because playing Briar was on rails and it sucked.
I've heard similar critiques of the mirror, but for the Lexi, but also Lexi's just a deck that I'm letting that deck as the best deck pass by me. You know, that's not one of the ones where I'm gonna sort of metagame and pick up and try to be the best at the best deck. Like, I think I'm gonna really go for the deck that beats the deck in this meta. And I'm looking at a wizard. I want to play Kano, but I also agree with Caleb and I agree with you. I mean, we are all in agreement that Icelander is just a better wizard. The issue is that Kano is just a more fun wizard. it's just
Absolutely.
really, yeah.
He really is.
Tell us how you feel after round 3.
After your second Dromai of the day.
Also, like, you want to talk about flesh and blood street cred. You take Kano to a major tournament. Man, you're one of the cool kids for life.
I don't know if you still get the same credit.
No, not as
you
easy.
take Arachne though, you might get the cred. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So challenge laid out. I want to just close out my final thought. I've had some changes of a change of heart. Changes of thought over the last couple of weeks of testing, and I was definitely in the camp of Lexi is the best deck in the format. Bullseye Braces, yes, good ban, solid ban, hurts it quite a bit. I think the 3 kind of heroes of Icelander, Dromai, Lexi are all in contention for like the best deck, I think, or the best hero for a myriad of different reasons, for the ability for people to play them, like you said, pick up and play them, the ability of specialists, the ability for them to operate in any given meta, the deck builds that people will come with. I think it's really hard to kind of put something between those 3 in terms of like what's the best deck, because there's just so much noise around those. And yeah, basically I'm just going to go back on saying I think Lexi is the clear best deck. I don't think it is anymore. I think all 3 of those could be vying for it in any given meta in any given event.
I mean, I'll tell you right now. Yeah, I was going to say, there's people listening to this who think you're just like, you're an idiot. They're like, well, Bravo's obviously the best deck.
Bravo's good.
Yeah.
Bravo's good.
I don't agree with that.
But it's definitely not. I don't think it's the level of those 3. So
yeah, the Dromai is pretty interesting to me, because like Dromai is also a deck that I feel like hasn't been performing like super well, but it's still in contention for being the top 3 deck. And we take Bravo out of that position where we put Dromai in, despite Dromai. I don't know. Dromai seems underwhelming to me in terms of results recently. Dromai just always has been underwhelming in terms of results, but at least it's had those top 8 results. I mean, we look at the PT, it did very well there, etc. And yeah, when it comes to Dromai as well, there's multiple archetypes, right? It's like, what version of Dromai are people on right now? Hayden, what credence do you give to decks like Briar and like Viserai in this meta? Are they just dead to Warmongers that as that card becomes more popular?
No, they're not just dead to Warmongers, but they're dead to me. I mean, Viserai might actually just be dead to Warmongers. I don't think Briar is. Like, having tested that matchup and testing to Warmongers, like, we've already seen builds start to adapt. I think if you look at the Salt Lake City Battle Hardened, the PTI event, you'll see that people are already adapting with their Briar lists. But it's not of particular interest to me, because I think it's hard to have good matchups into 2 of those top 3, no matter how you build it. Primarily just trying to have good matchup into Icelander and Lexi. Like, I think that is such an uphill battle for Briar. Like, I want to be feeling confident with my game plans, and I feel like I'm just kind of like praying into those matchups depending on how good my opponent is, and that's not where I want to be with Briar. So not a particular interest to me, but I think, still very powerful. Channel Heroic is still a thing. You still get to just have insane games, and you'll have insane power in your deck. Viserai, I think I really don't know how you can justify playing Viserai, unfortunately, in this meta, unless people just start taking out all the Warmongers recital from the deck.
Man, have you played that matchup into Icelander?
As Viserai?
Yeah.
No, it's unwinnable. It's actually like it might be like the like what is, you put this up on a pedestal as like the definition of an unwinnable matchup in Flesh and Blood. Like, it's so disgusting.
Even when like I've played the matchup from Icelander side mostly, and even when like things are going so horrendously bad for me as Icelander, somewhere around the middle of the game, I just end up 16 life up.
Yep. It's
like, it's insane.
Frostbite's
just hurt Viserai so much.
An Alluvian.
Yeah, I'll tell you guys, I mean, prior to this podcast, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to play Kano. Fuck testing. Fuck doing any of that stuff. I'm just going to have fun. But, oh, man, I think I've just been convinced through this podcast to maybe go to the ice. No, not that. Anything but that. No. Bring back Scalata.
Dash.
Pussies.
One last question. Let's give an outside shout for national season. We've talked about the Wizards, obviously. We've talked about Lexi, Bravo, even a bit of Dromai. Outside of those decks, what do you see as like an actual contender for winning some national championships? I don't know. You got any thoughts, Majin?
Oh, man. Yeah. I think there's a possibility. I don't think Azuri can. I think it has like one really good matchup and a ton of not very good ones. I think honestly, we saw Dash win an event recently.
Yeah.
I think Dash hitting the right matchups could absolutely win nationals.
Yeah.
Good shout.
Mm-hmm.
Dash is in that next tier for me. I think it's powerful. Actually, do you know, you look at the top 3, like maybe you're still a bit of a dog to Lexi, but like your Dromai matchup and your Icelander matchup, they're not that bad.
They're good. I don't want to see that matchup as Icelander. I played against in the PTI event round 1. I went down 1 life to 27 and had to fight back.
Oh my goodness.
It was very stressful.
Brendan,
What was the question? Remind me.
outside chance, outside shot for nationals. Sort of, if it's not those 5 decks, who's the next deck that's going to maybe put up some results? It's the next hero.
I think you're right. It's tough to not. I mean, it could be Azalea, right? But it's tough to not mention Dash. I mean, I don't have a lot of experience with Dash since, God, I mean, probably Crucible of War, but it has taken down some events. It's had some sort of prestigious top 8 results, and at this point, it's just like, I know it exists. I don't know how it got the performances that it did at some of these events. Like it won the biggest calling ever post Pro Tour. But yeah, there's clearly some players out there that are able to take that deck as far as they have. So, I mean, it's possible. It's possible. I wouldn't hold my breath for it as something like one of these bigger nationals events. I don't think.
It's won 2 callings this year, Dash.
Yeah, I know. It really is a sleeper deck. What credence do you guys give to decks? Now that the meta's matured, what credence do you guys give to decks like Vincent, Prism, Bolton, and Levy? Are those decks, are they not real anymore?
I tell you what, Prism was going to be, I don't want to be accused of psyops with Prism deck tech coming soon, but Prism I think could snatch a couple of nationals. I think Prism is a meta call, definitely a meta call, but is a good hero, is a powerful hero.
I have not been able to play locals over the past couple of weeks for various reasons, but our local Prism player has been winning most of them.
Yeah,
How much aggro in your meta?
How does the new Prism matchup go for you as Icelander?
So I have an idea of how it goes in my mind, and one of my buddies played against it, and he's a bit newer on Icelander, and he ended up losing. And I was like, how did you lose this matchup? This seems like it should be so good for us. And he told me, I was really close. I tried to do this, and I set up my Frost Hexes, and I was like, you did what? He's like, yeah, I set up my Frost Hexes. I'm like, why would you do this? So I think that it's probably good for Icelander, but I don't actually know this. I haven't played it. Hayden could probably tell you better.
I think it depends on the Prism list, but I think if you're playing the good Prism lists, it really comes down to if the Icelander understands the game well enough, and then I think Icelander can get it to being close. Otherwise, I think it's pretty Prism favored. But
okay, yeah, all right. No, I look forward to it. I look forward to getting absolutely destroyed by it in nationals, going back to this podcast and being like, wow, I look dumb.
Yeah, I mean, that's a weekly sort of retrospection that we have to go through.
I can't wait for the nationals retrospect.
Bravo wins, and they're like, dude, you guys didn't put Bravo in the top 3 decks.
In the top 8.
Yeah.
When you see me playing Prism at nationals.
We're Kano. All right. Majin, I want to thank you so much for coming on. It's great to sort of talk to a fellow wizarder, hear the passion that goes behind some of these decks. For people listening, I just want to give you a chance to shout out your Twitter, your Twitch stream, anything else you're up to, projects, etc.
Yep. MajinBae or MajinBae LOR at all my stuff. You can find me pretty easily on any of the platforms, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, all that kind of stuff. Come hang out. Sometimes I rant about Flesh and Blood.
Awesome. Well, for all of you listening, if you're listening to this on pod platforms, there's a video version on YouTube at youtube.com/ArsenalPass. If you listen to this podcast, you enjoy it, or you enjoyed this podcast specifically, the number one thing you can do for us is leave us a review. You can do it on Apple Podcasts or at ratethispodcast.com/ArsenalPass. Everybody's on Twitter at BrendanAPG, at Finn_Dale, and once again at MajinBae LOR. We do have some deck techs coming out pre-nationals. So Hayden, like you said, he does have that Prism coming out. Me and Majin are going to be doing an Icelander deck tech. And of course, the corresponding sideboard guides, tips and tricks, little write-up will be going on Patreon. So thank you to all the current supporting Patreon members. You help us do what we do, and we are eternally grateful. With that, Hayden, anything else to close out with?
Good luck to everyone playing Battle Hardened this weekend. Good luck to everyone with the last few preparations for nationals. Looking forward to calling US and US nationals plus a lot of other nationals around the world next weekend. Yep. And if there's a deck that we are sleeping on, we missed that is out there, maybe you're a big Bravo fan, let us know in the YouTube comments for sure. But for everybody else, thank you all so much for listening. We'll see you next week.